Okay, we got to do a little update on the Trump Epstein dilemma, conspiracy, what have you, and just a little update on Trump facilitating the release of Ghislaine Maxwell from her prison into a minimum security prison, which is a short step away from Trump pardoning her. And we've got all of the Republican conservative talking heads out there already getting on the same page, and most of them are now starting to come to the idea that Ghislaine Maxwell, she was just a victim in all of this too. And, I mean, she was Jeffrey Epstein's first victim. So, honestly, we should probably let her out of the jail because she's just another victim. She's just another one of Epstein's victims. Anyway, let's have a look-see at, this is, what's his face? Greg Kelly, son of corrupt ass police commissioner, New York police commissioner Kelly, who ended up going to jail for his corruption. Anyway, his son got a job on Newsmax spreading Republican conservative propaganda. Let's see what he's got to say.
Been subpoenaed by the Oversight Committee. I think this is great. I do have a feeling that she just might be a victim. She just might be. There was a rush to judgment. There was a lot of chaos there for a while. All right. Granted, she hung out with Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, yeah. Granted, she hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. That's all she did. She hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. Was probably not a great idea, considering he's the most prolific pedophile that we've ever had in American history. And he probably was Mossad working with the CIA to work up a blackmail ring on a bunch of politicians and celebrities to get them caught on camera sleeping with young girls. And she helped facilitate all that. But no, she's a victim. She's a victim.
And I know that's apparently not good.
Apparently.
But she's in jail for how long now? 20 years. A 20-year sentence.
She has not been in jail for 20 years. She was put in jail just a couple of years ago. Her sentence is 20 years. And she looks like she might not be serving too much more of those years. Anyway, I don't need to hear him tell me what she did. I can just talk to the victims, or I can just listen to the victims. Let's see here. This is Ghislaine Maxwell. This was back in 2021, the harrowing testimony that brought her down. Nearly a decade later, I saw her for the first time in court and no longer able to run away from the truth about her life with Jeffrey Epstein. This is one of the most high-profile convictions of a woman for enabling a sex trafficking ring. And most importantly, it's a major victory for more than 100 accusers who fought for more than a decade to have Epstein and his co-conspirator face criminal charges. The 60-year-old daughter of a British media tycoon, that's Maxwell. By the way, he had ties to Mossad as well. Her dad has been found guilty of grooming and trafficking girls as young as 14 years old for sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. There were several. She's a victim, though. She's a victim. There were several powerful moments inside a packed courtroom in New York City, mainly for the prosecution, which kept its case simple to avoid overwhelming the jury. Their aim was to show Maxwell was Epstein's partner in crime, a sexual predator whose modus operandi was clearly illustrated by 4 victims' experiences. The prosecution opening statement to the jury began with 11 words that sounded like the start of a children's book. I want to tell you about a young girl named Jane. But for those women, this was no fairy tale. It was a nightmare, and it was very, very real. How real became apparent the following day when Jane took the stand. She testified that Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein approached her when she was 14 years old at a summer arts camp in 1994. Over the next 2 years, she was abused about every other week, with Maxwell sometimes taking part. This was one of her key exchanges with prosecutors. Question: what was Maxwell's demeanor like during these incidents? I don't know what her name is here. It just says A. I guess Jane, that's A. I would say that it seems very casual, like it was very normal, like it was not a big deal. And when she behaved like that, how did that make you feel? Well, it made me feel confused because that did not feel normal to me. I've never seen anything like this or felt anything like this. And I was very embarrassed. You know, it's all of these mixed emotions. When you're 14, you have no idea what's going on. That's right, because you're a child. Other accusers would later recount similar experiences. One of the most oh, look at them. They look so happy and sweet together. Maybe going off to find their next victim. One of the most heart-wrenching testimonies came from Carolyn, who testified under her first name. The woman was visibly broken down by years of trauma and addiction to painkillers and cocaine. She had been raped by her grandfather at 4 years old, dropped out of school in the 7th grade, and was neglected by a mother who abused substances. Carolyn told the court it was one of Epstein's most outspoken accusers, Virginia Roberts, that's Virginia Giuffre, that first told her at 14 years old that she could make money by massaging a wealthy friend of hers. Carolyn met Maxwell when she showed up at Epstein's mansion in 2001. Maxwell, she said, told Virginia to take her upstairs to the massage room and show her what to do. Prosecutors told jurors that by this time period, Maxwell had devised a pyramid scheme of abuse that no longer required her to personally find the young girls for Epstein. They just had other young girls procure more young girls for them. Instead, they would reward vulnerable girls who brought someone new with extra cash. Children. These are children. Carolyn was paid hundreds of dollars to massage Epstein on each of the over 100 encounters until she became, quote, too old. She brought 3 other friends to Epstein. Carolyn and Maxwell once told her that she had a great body for Epstein and his friends before touching her breasts. The teenage girl often came from troubled homes. Their families faced things like bankruptcy, substance abuse, or previous sexual assaults. They're like a predator finding an injured, an injured, broken person, a weak person, somebody vulnerable, and preying on them. And even when they didn't, Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein lured them with friendships, gifts, and promises to help their careers or pay for their schooling. That, quote, grooming process, prosecutors say, was a key part of Maxwell's playbook. She then used the ruse of massages as an excuse to get the girls to touch Epstein and to normalize sexual conduct. Prosecutors said Maxwell would walk the girls into the room to be molested and abused, and sometimes was present to make it all feel normal and casual. The 2 other accusers in the indictment were at or over the age of consent in the places the abuse took place, and therefore the judge ruled these sex acts weren't illegal. Still, Kate, going by a pseudonym, and Annie Farmer, who publicly identified herself, were equally compelled on the stand to prove Maxwell's grooming techniques. Now, there's this woman right here. Her name is Julie Brown. She's been on this case for decades. And she's on Midas Touch here, and they're asking her about how Epstein and Donald Trump were kind of simpatico in how they were preying on girls in the modeling world. And let's see what she's got to say about this.
To the FBI and said, this is absurd. This is a serious crime. They're going to let this.
Just a precursor. They're talking about Epstein's first conviction when he was busted for soliciting sex from an underage minor. And that was in Florida with, he had, I believe it was, what was the guy's name? Dershowitz, pants on, underwear was on during the massage. Dershowitz, the Dersh, he was his lawyer, and the prosecuting attorney was Acosta, who later on became Donald Trump's labor secretary. So he ended up getting rewarded for that. And of course, they did interview Acosta later, and he kind of let it slip. He's like, well, the reason why we were so lenient in our prosecution of Epstein, he said that higher ups reached out to me and led me to believe to go easy on him because he was working with intelligence. So anyway, she's going on about, hey, we can't be so lenient on this guy.
Skywalk. And that's when the FBI took over around 2007. They started investigating. Now, by this time, there were more victims coming forward. So initially, there was only maybe 5 or 6. And now there was, almost 24, because one girl recruited another girl who recruited another girl. So if you interviewed the girl, it would say, well, I recruited this one, and this one. And then you go to those girls and they say, well, I recruited. It was like a pyramid scheme when he was doing, paying them to get more girls for him. So
and Maxwell's in the middle of this.
I'm sorry.
And Ghislaine Maxwell is deeply involved in the recruitment.
Well, initially she was the one that started this effort to recruit girls around Palm Beach. She would take Epstein's valet, and she would drive to spas in the area, and she would.
Remember, Donald Trump said that the reason why he kicked Epstein out is because he was poaching employees from his spa. One of those was Virginia Giuffre.
Find pretty girls at the spa, give them her business card, tell them, I have a very wealthy man. He's looking for a personal masseuse. He's going to pay you very well. You'll be able to travel around the world, etc. So she started that. And as I said, once he got his foot in the door at some of these high schools, he was able to then use the girls to bring him additional girls. So they were coming at like 3 of them a day at least to his home in Palm Beach. So the FBI took over the case, but the prosecutor, Maria Villafana, was hitting a wall it seems we now know, at every step of the way. Epstein was very shrewd in how he handled his case, in that he hired lawyers. Each of his lawyers had a tie to one of the prosecutors on the case. Jay Lefkowitz, for example, they worked at Kirkland and Ellis, and so did Alex Acosta. And Alex Acosta was very ambitious. He was a rising star in the Republican Party at the time. And so he was pressured by this lawyer who, by the way, he had enough influence to help appoint the new attorney general in 2007 or 8, I can't recall, Michael Mukasey. So he didn't want to, he was ambitious. He didn't want to bend anybody out of shape. Epstein hired Kenneth Starr.
Kenneth Starr. God, that's a blast from the past. Kenneth Starr. Do you remember Bill Clinton in the blue dress? That was all Kenneth Starr. That whole thing, that was him, Ken Starr.
Ken Starr is also from Kirkland and Ellis, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
And they're all Federalist Society people, aren't they?
Oh, and they're all Federalist Society. Of course they are, man. Of course they are. The scumbags of the legal community. Fucking.
Hey, and Acosta wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. So imagine what would happen if he had prosecuted a client that they would have frowned upon.
Right.
So, they hired a woman, a defense attorney who had a relationship with one of the attorneys, had dated one of the attorneys. So he was shrewd. He hired people that had ties, to big law firms and, ties in Washington.
Yeah, my understanding is Acosta was a protege of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito.
Right. He was. So
very well connected.
So you could see what I did that no one had really done before was I was able to sort of figure out a roadmap on how Epstein and his lawyers managed to pressure the prosecutors to basically give him a deal. I mean, he tried very hard to get off scot-free, but he wasn't able to do that. But ultimately, the one thing he was really able to do was keep the deal secret. Because had the victims or their lawyers found out exactly what they were doing, they would have objected very publicly. So he was able to get the prosecutors to agree to seal the deal so that nobody knew what it was. And so when he appeared in court to plead guilty,
Ken
nobody.
Starr was doing this. Ken Starr was.
Yeah, it was Ken Starr, and it was he had a whole team of people. Lefkowitz was certainly involved. Dershowitz was
prominent, very well-connected conservative attorney.
Right. And so, the deal came together, and boom, it was done before anybody knew about it. He was serving time in the Palm Beach County Jail, which was not much of a term, a jail term, because he was leaving every day to go to his office and sometimes even his home in Palm Beach. He completely manipulated the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office to allow him to essentially leave all day long and come back and just sleep there at night. In the meantime, he was at his office.
That's a hell of a jail sentence. You're just able to leave during the day and sleep at night at the jail like it's a hotel room. Wow. Hell of a deal he got.
And he hired all these Palm Beach Sheriff's deputies, paid them thousands and thousands of dollars to so-called monitor him. Well, they were calling him a client because he was paying them so well. So they weren't paying.
Basically bribing them.
Yeah. Right. And they were allowed. He was allowed visitors all day long, and some of them were women, and we now know that he was having sex with them in his office while he was supposed to be incarcerated. So he manipulated every aspect of his so-called punishment. So by the time, the victims filed a motion with the judge to unseal it, by the time it was unsealed, Jeffrey Epstein was walking out of jail and had already served his short jail term.
Yeah, and then Alex Acosta, what happened to him? Didn't he?
Didn't he go on to greater things later on?
He did become labor secretary, and then he had to resign. We don't know where I think he's on Fox News sometimes now, talking about the economy since he was labor secretary. But
but he had to resign because of the reopening.
That's my story. Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what happened was...
That's interesting that Acosta had to resign as labor secretary because this story keeps opening up. This old wound keeps seeping, and it does not matter how much they try to block the hole, Donald Trump and co., the leaks keep coming because it's just too much. It's too much to hide. Is there anything... this is a really interesting interview. You should watch the whole thing. Let's see if she says anything else, because one of the things she says is that Epstein was working on opening up a modeling agency as a front for human trafficking, and he was saying that I want to use the Donald Trump model because Donald Trump and Casablancas and that other dude from France, they were all using these modeling agencies as fronts for human trafficking, and Epstein was, taking advice for Donald Trump on how to start his own modeling agency.
My story came out in November of 2018, and it just really went, viral. And some prosecutors in the office of the Southern District of New York, the DOJ's office in New York, took the story that I wrote, showed it to the prosecutor, and said, we've got to do something about this. What can we do? So he said, investigate, find out if there's any victims here in New York, find out, look into it. So that's how it all started.
Yeah. The Attorney General of Florida was Pam Bondi at the time. What was her?
For the tail end. She was not Attorney General when the deal was struck, but there was a lot of information that came out subsequent to the deal. In other words, the victims filed a lawsuit claiming that the federal government violated their rights because they didn't tell them about the, you're supposed to, under the Crime Victims' Rights Act, inform victims when someone's reached a plea deal or is appearing in court. And they didn't do any of that. They purposefully, deliberately concealed this from them.
Bondi in her office.
Yeah. Bondi was a state. The federal government concealed it from her. But Bondi certainly over the years knew that this was a sexual predator, okay? There was no arguing that. Even he wouldn't call himself that, but he didn't deny that he was doing this to young girls. So there wasn't like he was still saying he was innocent. He always said he was involved with these girls. He just didn't know how old they were, how young they were, rather.
Yeah.
So as more victims over the years started suing him, there's all this discovery. And there were some stories written over the course of Bondi's tenure as Attorney General. And it would be hard for me to believe that this was a big case. It involved celebrities, former presidents. She had to know about this information. So, and as far as we know, she didn't do anything about it.
She did nothing during this period.
No, I don't think so. Because the lawyers who represented the victims were begging authorities to look at what they had uncovered as part of the discovery in the civil lawsuits they had filed against Epstein.
Yeah. One of the most interesting articles that I read of yours from this period was about your investigation of the model industry.
Here we go.
And Epstein and overlap with Trump, who had a major interest in the model industry, and they had a mutual interest.
Right. Well, there was that came out as part of the discovery in one of the lawsuits. Brad Edwards, who represented a number of victims, deposed Epstein had a company, a modeling company, and Brad Edwards deposed the accountant who worked for that company, worked for Epstein's company, modeling company. And in that deposition, she provided a lot of detail about what he was doing. And it's clear that he was using that company, a modeling company, as a cover in part for the sex trafficking that he was doing, because she was describing exactly what they would do. They would send the younger girls down to Epstein's place in Palm Beach. And she just gave more detail than we had before, including the fact that when Epstein formed that company, he said to her, "I want it to be set up just like Donald Trump's modeling agency." So,
Ooh, damn.
What that
and
means,
that's in that record. That she testified to that under oath.
right?
That Epstein said that he wanted to model his modeling company that he would invest in on Trump's.
That's right. And so, we don't know what that means. Whether that we.
Anyway, yeah, we don't know what that means, but he built his modeling agency as a front to human traffic underage girls to and from Palm Beach to his private island, and he wanted to base that on Donald Trump's modeling agency. It's all very, very sus. Got a Rolling Stones thing. Polls show widespread disapproval and suspicion of Trump's handling of the Epstein files. Americans are overwhelmingly skeptical of Donald Trump's handling of the information related to Jeffrey Epstein case. In a new UMass Amherst national poll, 70% of respondents said that Trump is not handling the case very well, while 18% said that he is. Among the respondents who were aware of Epstein and the deceased billionaire and convicted sex offender, 63% agree that Trump administration is hiding important information about the case. Of those who said the administration is hiding information, the staggering 81% blame Trump for it. Others in Trump's orbit also received blame, including Attorney General Pam Bondi, 59%, FBI Director Kash Patel, 49%, House Speaker Mike Johnson, 47%, and just 16% blame Democrats in Congress. How you're blaming people in Congress is beyond me, but look, you can blame Pam Bondi for it, but old Pam Bondi is just doing what she's told. She is serving at the pleasure of the president. So is FBI Director Kash Patel. Now, of course, everybody's pissed off at Kash because he said he was going to release those files. He said it so many times, I can't even remember how many times he said it, but one of the last times he said it was on Joe Rogan. And then now he's not doing it. And of course, Mike Johnson literally shut down Congress because they were trying to hold a vote on the House floor to release the files. And then Mike Johnson's like, okay, well, we're just shutting down Congress, so we can't have this vote. So if he's going to get some blame, he should. Let's see. President's overall approval rating took a dive to 38%, down 6 points since April. The new data seems to back up efforts that Trump has lost significant ground with his MAGA base over the Epstein issue. He came to power in part because his followers believed that he would root out corruption and the deep state. But as news continues to break about this years-long friendship with Epstein amid reports that Trump's is named multiple times in the file, the president's credibility is fading. 59% of the poll's respondents aware of Epstein said that they believe that he and Trump were once good friends. Trump isn't helping himself either, complaining last week that Epstein stole one of his victims from his job at Mar-a-Lago property. That is Virginia Giuffre, who was working in the spa. And the Bureau of Prisons under Trump recently transferred Epstein's longtime partner, Ghislaine Maxwell. I wish her well, folks. She, I knew her, and I find that everybody's coming after her. I just wish her well. I wish everybody well. Meanwhile, every woman that he ever talks about, he always calls a nasty woman. But Ghislaine, he wishes her well. To a lower security facility after she met with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche in private. Her move to a less strict prison has drawn scrutiny, considering Maxwell is serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. When asked about what Maxwell and Blanche discussed, Trump said he thought Blanche just wanted to make sure that the innocent people aren't hurt. Right. Go in there, feel her out, make sure she blames the Clintons and blames Bill Gates and all the Democrats and all the celebrities and not me. And then things will be okay. The administration seeking to quell discontent and citing abundant public interest. He asked 2 judges to release grand jury testimony, which is already out there, but whatevs. And by the way, it's heavily redacted. On indict of Maxwell and Epstein on sex trafficking charges, but the administration is still facing pressure to release other documents the Justice Department processes related to the case. I mean, they've had these files for a long ass time, but they are not releasing them. I mean, I believe it was May when Pam Bondi told Donald Trump, he's like, yo, man, your name's in this file. That was back in May. And it wasn't much longer after that, or it was just after Elon Musk said, oh, and by the way, Trump is in the Epstein file. Have a nice day. So maybe that's where he got that information from. Anyway, the whole sitting on my desk, we don't need to rehash all that. But by the way, here's something a little interesting. House panel subpoenas Clintons and other officials on Epstein probe, seeks files from DOJ. So they're going after Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And you know what I got to say about that? Good. Get 'em. Get 'em. If Bill Clinton was doing child molestation, yeah, man, throw his ass in jail too. But what Trump is trying to do is just say that, oh, it was just Hollywood celebrities and the Clintons, and I had nothing to do with it. Meanwhile, there are more pictures of Donald Trump and Epstein together than Carter had little liver pills. Only my dad will get that reference. But, I mean, the Trump-Epstein friendship was so fucking prolific. It was everywhere, and it is completely unavoidable. So, when I see, all of these wheels in motion, you have all of the talking heads saying that Ghislaine Maxwell is a victim, moving her to a summer club of a prison, and then of course having meetings behind the scenes with the Deputy Attorney General on Blanche, and holding back all the files and only releasing some redacted shit. It stinks to fucking high heaven. It smells like a fucking fish market, man. Everything is so fishy with this shit. And like I said, man, this case keeps popping up. It has been popping up for a better part of 2 decades. And they'll quell it, and then it'll come back, and then they'll quell it again, and it'll keep coming back. Donald Trump, he can't hide from this. There will be a contingent of his people that would never believe that he would do anything wrong. But The majority of the American public sees this for what it is. It is a fucking cover-up, and Donald Trump knows it. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe. Keep rocking.